Good afternoon, welcome to Talking Business on Independent Television. Apologies for. But we're glad that the show came to you today because I know you have been waiting for it. We have two very exciting discussions today. First, we'll look at corporate governance and what it means for startups. And I have an economist here in the studio with me, Dr. Ustaze. You are welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. Happy New Month.
Thank you. I wish
New
you
month
say.
to September. Same, thanks.
Yes, we are in September. Before you know it, we'll be hearing jingle bells. It's
Yeah.
Christmas.
Once the ember months come, it's December already.
December,
October, November.
and then December.
Yes.
What we're grateful
Apart from October, you start hearing the jingle
the
bells.
jingle bells.
We hope the economic situation will give us
Jingle with
enough
the bell.
reasons,
Okay.
to jingle. I know last year it was around almost December 24th we started hearing people were angry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
Unlike
and
before,
people
from
were
October,
complaining
you
of
start-
very low patronage.
Exactly. So hopefully things can change within any time.
Okay.
So hopefully
let's
we'll
look at
change.
this last quarter just improves for Nigeria's economy.
Hopefully.
We'll look at that because the report of the second
Quarter.
how the GDP performed in the second quarter of this year has been released by the NBA.
NBS.
All of that will be because of the show. First,
Sure, yeah.
let's look at corporate governance.
Yeah.
Now, besides access to funds being a major problem for startups, report also has is that corporate governance is one of the challenges that hurts startups a lot. What is corporate governance and what role does it play in business?
Okay, yeah, it's very true. We know the normal complaints we get most times from startups,
Yes.
corporations generally, but particularly startups, is the fact that they complain about inadequate or unavailability of capital,
Yes.
poor power supply, harsh operating environment generally. But most times, the underlying factor usually is non-adherence to corporate governance principles, and by definition, very short and straightforward. It's just a set of, or a system of code of best practices,
Okay.
ethical conduct, which you institutionalize in your business, so that it's like a code.
Okay.
Even the federal government recently, I think January 2019, they launched a new set of codes for corporate governance. There were about 28 of them, 28 broad principles,
Okay.
and about 16 was with particular attention to boards, owners, that board of directors, generally the ownership structure of
Okay.
a corporation, even for your businesses, so the owners, the ownership structure. And I think that's the major point, the fact that you have different principles, but the major point is that ownership should be separated from the business.
Okay.
You get it? So you don't have to be a limited liability company, because most times, for limited liability company, they say the company is now a separate human being
Yes.
from the owners. So the
Yes.
company, they say, can sue and be sued. The company can borrow money on its own. So that's why when the company folds up, when you are taking, you can't drag the owners to court. You sue the
it's separate
owner. It's
from
like
the
a
business.
it's like a separate entity. It's seen as a human with human flesh and so on. So that's what so you don't have to be a limited liability company to implement or to put into practice corporate governance principles
Okay.
for your own good, your own sustenance. Because even research findings have showed that usually the first 5 years
Yes.
or so of businesses are usually the critical period. And most times when they survive the first 5 years, there's likelihood that they would sustain forever. And most times, 80% or about 60-70% the report says usually die or fail in the first
In the
5
first
years.
5 years.
So that points to the fact that startups are at a higher risk of failing. So corporate governance, generally it means that your ownership should be separate. I listened to one of your programs once when there was someone who came here. He was teaching on entrepreneurship. He said he has businesses in Ghana, he has businesses here. He was talking so very, he was talking very, like I think he said he does palm kernel
Yes,
business or so
I
on.
remember
Yes,
the
yes.
show,
And he was talking and you could see discipline. It's just,
Yes.
corporate governance is just about discipline. That's the second name you could give. That knowing what's your business, not when you want to fly outside the country or something, then you just go some don't even have accountants, so you just tell your accountant to give you money
Especially when it's
to fly.
startup and it's a sole proprietorship.
Exactly. So it's more critical.
Yes.
You have to discipline, set out business. In fact, there's nothing wrong in getting an audit. It doesn't have to be a big audit firm without calling names so that I don't give adverts.
Okay.
You have small audit firms, startups that are everywhere. You can even get an auditor, a private auditor working in anywhere, and tell him to come and audit your business for you.
That would seem for a startup like, wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that too corporate? Why do I need to get an auditor to
Yeah.
audit my business? I can do the checks and balances.
Exactly. So that's why you see that the sacrifice is what, at the end of the day, the sacrifice will be worth the effort.
Okay.
Because you now ask yourself, as one of the former presidents said, I think one General Olusegun Obasanjo, you say if education is too expensive, then try ignorance. Exactly.
Yes.
So if you think that it's expensive, it gives you this copy, then failure or failing of the business is not going to be a better option. So it even will come at very reasonable cost. You can have very good accounting firms or just a practicing accountant who can do it for you, probably 50, 60, 70,000. It's just, even 80,000, it's just a way of keeping your books straight for you.
It may be an annual event.
It can be annual, but it's preferable most times that you do audits at various points. Either that's why they now have what you call interim audits.
Okay.
So you could do it at 3 months, but you have most corporations do it every 6 months. Then you do your final audit last year so that you can discover any loophole, any fraud, or any chances that you are missing out on something anytime during the process. There are times even you might have someone who is just looting you. One of your workers might be looting you until you carry out an audit before you find out. You might not know. So that's it. So just carry out regular audits. Let the business structure. There's this bank, Equatorial Trust Bank. It has never been a limited liability company, all the while. Okay. But you see that it has survived all this while. It's now Sterling Bank. It's because they have carried out corporate governance. So you don't necessarily, I'm just driving the fact that you don't have to be a limited liability company to know that the company should be separate. It's separate, and it should be able to have its own funds. It should be able to be audited. It should be able to get its own workers. So your employer, if your son works there, you pay him.
Okay.
Yeah, so that you see that there's accountability.
Okay.
You pay him. If your son wants to go somewhere, he works from his salary. So he doesn't say, Dad, I want to get a car. He works. Since he's working with you, you're paying him salary. He has to get his expenditure sorted out from his salary. So business should be kept separate from the ownership structure.
Could it be that for limited liability companies, the reason why they observe more discipline and adhere to corporate governance rules is because they have stakeholders to answer to, people who have committed their money to answer to, as against a company that runs and it just answers to maybe the owner, and the owner is the one who runs the business, so it has no one to answer to.
Yeah, that's the major factor because you have shareholders. The moment you become a limited liability company, it's expected that you sell part of your company, no matter how small. So you must give out shares. So people now are like part owners. You can't just wake up and take a decision. Okay. Whatever decision has to be made should be. So that's why the difference is that with limited liability company, it's compulsory that it becomes a separate entity. But this sole proprietorship, partnership, or unlimited liability is not compulsory. But that's where discretion now has to come in. For the sake of sustenance of the business, you should now carry out these corporate governance principles and make it separate from the ownership structure. Yeah, so it just has to, it's just a common sense and personal discipline, because you ask yourself, as I said, is failure an option? So if you are to now wait for, you don't have to be limited, as I said, an unlimited liability company who has special interest in it sustaining, in business existing, because it's not a good omen that you have startups not failing, especially in Nigeria. It's very common. You have startups 2, 3 years. I know of so many, 1, 2, 3 years, and they are gone. So it doesn't have to be compulsory.
Drivers of the economy.
The economy, and most SMEs are sole proprietorship, partnership at best, joint. So by the time we now start having series of failed companies, failed businesses at SME level. In China, it has been said so many times, 70% to 80% of the economy is driven by SME, even in Nigeria. 60, 70%. The general consumer, what are SMEs? general consumer goods, all these, even your provision stores,
Yes.
your toiletry making and manufacturing bread. These are the ones. They are the ones who give
they're the ones who
biggest
provide
employment.
day-to-day services and make
Exactly.
day-to-day products available.
You're very correct, and they give the employment. How many people do all those big multinationals have? Because machinery has taken a large portion of their production, so
Yes.
they have very low human percentage of labor. So the SMEs are the drivers of them in terms of taxes, in terms of employment, in terms of even productivity. So it's important. I don't know if we should regularly have workshops for them, but I think SMEs should try to imbibe corporate governance principles. Basic of them is segregating the ownership structure from the business. Carry out regular follow-ups, audits on your businesses, accounting and audit. What most of them do is just accounting. They keep records and so on. But the auditor,
But what's the
like a
difference,
check.
basically?
Yeah, and
between both?
yeah, what accounting job generally does is just record keeping.
Okay.
Bookkeeping, what you call. So somebody comes, buys one biscuit, you write it down. Somebody comes, buys 2 biscuits, you write it down. Then at the end of the day, you see if it's correct. But what the auditor does is that he checks for, beyond just the record, he checks for, as I said, an unlimited liability company who has special interest in it sustaining, in business existing, because it's not a good omen that you have startups not failing, especially in Nigeria. It's very common. You have startups 2, 3 years. I know of so many, 1, 2, 3 years, and they are gone. So it doesn't have to be compulsory.
Drivers of the economy.
The economy, and most SMEs are sole proprietorship, partnership at best, joint. So by the time we now start having series of failed companies, failed businesses at SME level. In China, it has been said so many times, 70% to 80% of the economy is driven by SME, even in Nigeria.
Yes.
60-70%. The general consumer, what are SMEs? General consumer goods, all these, even your provision stores,
Yes.
your toiletry making and manufacturing bread. These are the ones. They are the ones who give
they're the ones who
biggest
provide
employment.
day-to-day services and
Exactly.
make day-to-day products available.
You're very correct, and they give the employment. How many people do all those big multinationals have? Because machinery has taken a large portion of their production, so they have
Yes.
very low human percentage of labor. So the SMEs are the drivers of them in terms of taxes, in terms of employment, in terms of even productivity. So it's important. I don't know if we should regularly have workshops for them, but I think SMEs should try to imbibe corporate governance principles. Basic of them is segregating the ownership structure from the business. Carry out regular follow-ups, audits on your businesses, accounting and audit. What most of them do is just accounting. They keep records and so on. But the auditor,
But what's the
like a
difference,
check.
basically?
Yeah, and
between both?
what accounting job generally does is just record keeping.
Okay.
Bookkeeping, what you call. So somebody comes, buys one biscuit, you write it down. Somebody comes, buys 2 biscuits, you write it down. Then at the end of the day, you see if it's correct. But what the auditor does is that he checks for, beyond just the record, he checks for misplacement of figures.
Okay.
So probably instead of 28, you wrote 82.
Okay.
That's what the auditor has to check. Even the auditor now even does stock verification.
Okay.
So if you say you just imported a trailer load of cement into your store, the auditor will go beyond just checking the papers. He will go to the store
Okay.
to verify that the amount that is remaining
Okay.
matches with what your paper is saying is remaining. And so the auditor goes beyond just paperwork to do physical verification. So it helps. And in the process of that, you will definitely see if your paper is saying you have 30 bags of cement.
And you actually have maybe
and
like
you have
10.
About 10 there. So it shows that there's some criminal investigations. So the auditor is like an investigator.
Okay.
That's why you see most times when auditor is coming. I remember I used to work in the bank then. You see everybody is on everybody is on his toes. We are all shaking. But when the auditor is checking your toolbox then in the back, you'll be praying, you'll be wishbone. So that's what the auditor is like an investigator.
But beyond the financial aspects, you have the accountant, you have the auditor ensuring that what you actually make is what you have actually in the account, and as far as expenditure is concerned, everything is intact. But let's look at service delivery. That seems to be one issue with some businesses. some businesses are located in places where they could have lots of patronage. But once there is competition and the service delivery begins to drop in terms of quality, patronage also drops. But they may not know. It's like it starts one.
So that's why basically the structure business should have its own ownership structure.
Okay.
So that it can monitor, professionalism should come in so that it can check all these issues that you raised about, where there's a drop in service due to competition,
yes,
and try to match also.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll continue with other discussions after this break. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned to Talking Business on ITV. So now let's look at the GDP report as released by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics for the second quarter of 2022. Now that report says that 28 sectors of the economy declined in the second quarter of 2022 as real gross domestic product shrunk by 63.49 billion naira quarter on quarter. 28 sectors declined.
I think this has been a record low in terms of performance of aggregate sectors.
Okay.
The report tried to do a coverage of 46 sectors.
Okay.
And 18 sectors or 11 sectors were covered and 28 recorded decline in fortunes. But when you see the report, it shows that the economy grew from quarter one from 3.11% in quarter one to 3.54% in quarter two. So it seems like good news when you look at it. But when you look at the real GDP figure for quarter one, you see that it dropped. It was about 7.5 trillion in quarter one. It dropped to about 7.29 trillion in quarter two. So figures in terms of quarter to quarter, it dropped. But year on year, you see that you will now want to ask yourself, why is it that it dropped, the aggregate real GDP figure dropped from quarter one to quarter two? It dropped, but you now have an increase, 3.11% to 3.54%. So it's just the base effect, as we usually say in economics. So you know, the year on year is calculation, this showing the performance in quarter two 2022 and quarter two 2021. So it shows that just like the example we try to give most time, when a millionaire, a billionaire now gets a newer car. He has been probably using a Corolla, he now gets a Venza or something. So it's not as appreciated as when someone who was by the street begging, all of a sudden now starts driving.
So that's a giant leap for that person.
That's the word. It's a giant leap. So because the GDP figure for quarter two 2021 was very low, so that's why the mirror effect now, it looks so high in quarter two 2022 now, but it shrunk. The economy shrunk by about 63 billion from quarter one to quarter two. And you have as many as 18 sectors. I hope I'm able to remember. There are most of the sectors are crucial sectors. Education and decline. Manufacturing, 3 of the 13 subsectors investigated. 10 of the 13 declined. Just 3 had positive growth. Though that's not a surprise. We know manufacturing has been struggling. Accommodation, food services. These are sectors that are recording positive growth, but they all declined. Education, that has not strained because of all the various strikes in the last. The strike started in February, which was first quarter. It extended to second quarter. So many. I think pharmaceuticals had a positive growth. Core production increased. Very marginally.
It was mixed positive for agricultural sector.
Livestock reduced and some other then. Core production very marginally. So many sectors declined. Recreation declined. Road transportation increased, but water transportation also increased, but rail transportation reduced. So it might just be because you know what has been happening with the aviation sector. So people now, because of the high cost of air tickets.
So some persons are returning to road transport and some other ways of transportation.
Exactly. So they may just want to risk the insecurity, but rail transport reduced by over 60-70%. Maybe not unconnected with the Kaduna rail track incident, which has not even been resolved. So you had many declines, 28 sectors declined. The major ones that had the increase were mainly pharmaceuticals, social services, and so on. So it's a dire situation. Just that. So that's why looking at it on the surface, as I said, 3.54. You have government officials and generally government officials here rejoicing and trying to give us the impression that the economy is growing, but that's not true. As I said, the economy shrunk, and most times GDP figures really do not give the real state of the economy, especially when it comes to welfare, because the economy is about me and you.
Yes.
It's about what if the economy is growing and we don't have less, we have less money in our pockets.
And inflation is increasing.
Exactly. So you expect that as GDP grows, what GDP is a measure of production, the amount of goods and services that are produced. So you expect that as it's growing, if production is increasing, it means that employment should be increasing.
Yes.
Because if your output increases, you employ more people, it means that income should also increase.
Okay.
It means that I and you, we should have more money in our pocket. But it's not the case. So you see that most times GDP figures is really not something, personally, I don't believe in GDP figure because GDP for me is just a measure of activity.
Okay.
That there measures activity in the economy without necessarily looking at the value of what is produced. So it means that if it's activity, it means that a country like Nigeria that has a high number of population, we are about 200 million people.
Yes.
Since it's an activity variable.
Of course, there will be high activity.
We always report high GDP. And that's why Nigeria has always recorded, we always say it's the biggest economy in Africa.
Because we're looking at the GDP rate, yes.
Just because of, but when you look at real GDP or GDP per man, or what you call per capita GDP, when you now divide that GDP by the number of people, the population, you see that Nigeria always struggles. A country like South Africa, their GDP per man is running into $50-something thousand per one person. So that shows that one person is contributing that to GDP. But Nigeria is just about $2,400 per man. So it shows that it's just an activity. So sometimes most economists, we don't like to put so much effect on that, because also GDP is mainly an aggregate computation. You have consumption plus investment plus government, export minus imports. Consumption is not, you're really not contribution. It's not a contribution to production. It's really an expenditure, consumption. It's just investment that is really putting something into the economy. Government expenditure is also an expenditure. So it's just investment that is an input. Consumption, you are taking from the economy. Government taking for the economy. Export minus import, that's net export. We know Nigeria of recent, in the last few
we've always been having deficits in trade, yes.
So it means that, so it just means that what's our level of investment? So you see, GDP is just measuring activity, consumption, what's the amount of consumption, what's the amount of investment, what's the amount of government expenditure. So all those just show, so if you are consuming high, GDP figure is increasing. If your government is spending enough, GDP figure is without really increasing our income. And it's revenue. You are servicing your debt. You need revenue. And that's why you see the oil sector. Oil sector was among those that recorded negative growth. Oil sector fell by about 42%. And you see that oil sector has usually been the highest contributor to revenue.
Until now.
Until now, even, until now. But you now ask, how much has oil really contributed to GDP over the last, even in the 1970s, when oil boom was very high, it was contributing as much as 90% to revenue, to forex. Oil production, oil and gas sector never contributed beyond 20% to GDP, even during the times when there was
why is that?
It just shows that it's an activity, as I said. How many people are in the oil? The oil sector is like an enclave sector. You can say, without exaggerating, that the oil sector employs just less than maybe 1% of the Nigerian population. How many people work in NNPC? How many people work in Chevron compared to the larger population? So that's why you see that agriculture always contributes at 70%, 80%.
Because you have a lot of persons who are into that sector.
But because our production is still primary, so that's why you see that it's not contributing as much
as it should,
revenue, as much as oil is. But because oil is mechanized, you have refineries, drilling machines, so just very little input, human input, revenue is high. So it just shows that we should bring in more mechanization, more
into the agricultural sector,
into the service sector. Service sector has always been doing well. I think communication and information has been doing well over the last period. So it just brings us back to square one, that our economy is showing signs of 3.5 growing, but the real GDP, real GDP per man, quality of our outputs is very, very low.
Okay.
So that's why we could record 18, 19 trillion for who cares. And at the end of the day, South African economy will still be seen in terms of development,
Yes.
actual development, as more developed than Nigeria economy.
Okay, do you think that's now a job for the NBS instead of focusing? Because sometimes when the GDP report is released, you find that that's like now an anchor for government agencies to qualify
Yeah.
the growth of the economy, whether it's doing well or not. They tell you, oh, we still have this as our GDP growth, we still have this as our GDP rate, and it seems like, okay, fine, the economy is doing well. Should the focus move away now from GDP by the NBS that keeps data of these activities to what will indicate the real growth or the restate of the economy?
Yeah, I think that's not an issue for the policymakers
Okay.
to determine. Most countries have moved away from using
GDP,
as
okay.
a measure of growth. Many, even the World Bank uses GNI as gross national income.
Okay.
You have some other countries. I know US uses HDI, Human Development Index, which measures welfare.
Okay.
You know, so that's why in economy you call economic growth and development.
Okay.
Growth measures this GDP activity, but development is talking what's happening to the humans.
Okay.
Welfare.
Now, to cut in there, we've already almost borrowed policies from the international scene. Is it okay for us to borrow such policy from the US that measures the welfare of the people?
Yeah, I think that would have been a good effort, but I don't know. Just like how you have in
Okay.
consumption, you are taking from the economy. Government taking for the economy. Export minus import, that's net export. We know Nigeria 70s are still used to teach. You check our curriculum, you have you see a KG3 child or a
Okay.
primary 1 child doing as much as 17, 18 subjects.
Okay.
And you check some of the subjects, you are asking yourself, how does this contribute?
Okay,
to
which of them is relevant
exactly, which is relevant
in this part of the world?
Exactly, and even when you now go to the secondary, even in the university, you still keep cramming calculus and calculus and calculus, the y and the x, and you're wondering how does it. So most of these developed countries have adjusted their curriculum to meet technical standard, because technology is what drives the economy. So bringing that to our policy, I think our policy makers, I don't know if they are just too slow to learn adjustments in international standard. They travel outside the country, but why, when it comes to issues that brings development, they are not ready to, they are not amenable, but it's things that, so I think it all has to do with the policy makers again. If we can, so as I said, World Bank, IMF, they have other data that measure welfare.
Okay.
So even GDP per capita would have been a better.
Isn't the IMF also responsible for us using the GDP as a growth measurement when it comes to the economy? Because you find the IMF making projections of, oh, Nigeria will have this GDP rate at the end of the year 2022, 2023. So it seemed like they're already giving the Nigerian economy a focus.
Yeah, of course, they are not going to help you to come out. So as long as we remain with the GDP computations, then they will play along with us, so that it doesn't seem like they are mandating or dominating our policies. So it depends on us. It needs government, but you know, all this will have to be gazetted. MBS cannot even just wake up and start using another computation method. It will have to be gazetted. Bills will have to be sent. Issues with democracy. And generally, even if we are using GDP figures, this nominal and real GDP, the conventional GDP, it's not even a reason, as you just mentioned, for policymakers to be uhuru, because the World Bank has said it several times that for Nigeria to get any substantial level of development, not even complete development or growth, we should record as much as double-digit figure for the next 20 to 30 years. Double-digit figures. So if we are not even close to a double-digit. We are still 3.5.
Yes.
So it means we should be between 10 to 15, even 20% for the next 30 years. That's the World Bank prediction for Nigeria to get any substantial. We have dropped from developed. There was a time we're developing. Now we are now in less developed. We are now among the less developed countries, not even developing. South Africa is somewhere there. So it's up to us. We shouldn't, even if we are using the nominal, the conventional GDP figure, there's still a lot to be done. Because we still have, for less developed countries, there's still idle capacity that has to be covered. You see, US, they've been talking recently of going towards a recession. They just dropped their growth GDP figure, just like our drop from 1.6% to 0.5%.
Okay.
Yeah, 0.5. That's fair because they are developed and there's really little capacity to grow again. Because what are you? Is it construction? You know, construction was another activity that also declined. So is it construction that you are, what, you know, it's construction, production, all these things that lead to growth. So there's really little of those activities in the US, in the UK, because they are already a developed economy.
Yes.
So there's very low capacity. So they can be growing at 2%, and that would be very, very remarkable. They can even go at 0.5%, it's remarkable. But we have very, very idle capacity.
Okay.
That still has to be made full capacity to current capacity. So we should be going at double. So even if, as the conclusion, even if we are using conventional GDP, let's not even talk about welfare. It's not enough for us to celebrate yet.
Okay.
Because we should be looking at double digit growth for the next 30 years.
Okay, now there's one sector we haven't talked about, that's the aviation sector.
Yeah.
That seems to be having lots of crises, to which the forex scarcity is playing a major role.
It declined from 22 billion to 9 billion.
Okay.
So that's about 70% because, 25 billion to 9 billion.
Okay.
That's over 50% because 50% is 12.5 and this is 9. So the decline was very serious and it's just because of forex. You know, recently they have been having issues with repatriation of their funds.
Yes.
CBN, they said their funds were locked. And I heard so many people, you know, saying that CBN has given the aviation industry 263 million. It should have been given to us, so it should have been given to... No, I think it's a misconception. This is not CBN gifting or granting the airlines money. This is their money that they've been... What happened is that they sell their tickets in Naira. So most of them have parent companies.
Yes.
It was really the foreign airlines that had the issue. Emirates in Dubai, British Airways and so on, Lufthansa in Germany. They have to repatriate this money
Back to the parent companies.
Because they are the ones who prepare their accounts and everything. So there is an agreement with the IATA, International Air Transport Agency, that they charge their air tickets in Naira, but whenever they want to repatriate, they should get the corresponding value of this Naira in their account in hard currency on demand.
Okay.
That's the agreement. So they do it through the IATA platform on demand. So if they want it today, CBN, they should be able to get the equivalent value of their Naira
in forex.
To repatriate immediately. But of recent, they have been having problems that it recently reduced to 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks. Then from 2 weeks, it's not even started going to months where they could not access forex. And you know, the last I also said is that you now have people who were applying for foreign schools. You know, most of them always apply to CBN too. Then 2 weeks you get your forex after you apply. Now, you have some people on the queue for about 2-3 months waiting for queue. So that's what the airline operators were complaining about. The fact that they are now being on the queue. CBN says they should wait on the queue to get forex as against the agreement of on demand. Okay. Then some of them who can't wait have to now use the parallel market, which is about 700 naira, which means it's a loss
to them.
To them, yeah, because you sold tickets, probably have 90 million naira, you're buying at 700 naira per dollar. That's 90 million. That cannot be the value again. So that's the problem. They had consultations with the Minister of Aviation, with the central bank, with the federal government, and they were giving them promises. So that's why most of them gave a deadline. The Emirates was supposed to be September 1st yesterday before CBN intervened. So that's the problem. And they have said that in any case, except you now want us to be selling our tickets in dollars. Okay. So that we don't need to have this.
The issue of repatriating funds.
Exactly.
But that makes it more expensive because if they sell at dollars, it means that even the demand locally here for forex will be higher. For you to purchase a ticket, you have to get dollars to do that.
Of course, it means that you also need to get the dollars too. And it's even a dangerous practice because it means you are dollarizing the Nigerian economy. There's really no economy that would take it that you now spend dollars, now spending dollars in the country when dollar is not the official currency. So it's even demonizing the economy. So that was the point. That added to the fact that we know what has happened to aviation fuel. Yes. Jet A1. The prices have been increasing in the last, I think since this year, but beginning of the year it was about 300 naira per liter. It's about 850 now. In last quarter, I said that you need a Boeing 737 uses about 4 liters in just 1 second. So if you so that's 4 liters times 800, that's about 3,200 naira for just 1
1
second.
second.
So in 60 minutes,
And for
which is
local
1 minute,
flights, you have a minimum of 30 minutes.
30 minutes, 45 minutes. So it means that if it's 1 minute, it's 192,000. So when you are going for probably, let's say 45 minutes, that's about 8 million naira. So you see that most of them have been complaining, and it all boils down to Forex. They have to get this. And you know, the last time we also talked about the aviation fuel prices. They are not even complaining. The complaint is about the increase in fuel, but they are also complaining about the fact that it's not even available. NNPC has said they gave it to Duke Oil. Duke Oil has been giving different excuses. So most times they don't even get the aviation fuel to buy. So most of them are now buying it themselves, importing fuel themselves.
And making it more expensive, having to pay for landing costs and all.
Exactly. But if you have to buy fuel for you can't now go to CBN and queue for the other. You have to find your own dollars. And that's why FE has increased. From my relation who came from Abuja last week, they paid 306,000 naira for a return ticket from Lagos to Abuja.
Okay.
153. This is something that was going for as low as 40, 50K. So you now have more people, and that's also because the road has had problem with security. Rail services had problem. So most people moved to the airlines. But the airline did not grow in capacity. Capacity was even reducing. You have Aero Contractor now even shut down last month. Dana Air was,
yes.
NCAA suspended them. There was a financial audit and health audit. They found out that their financial status was going towards bankruptcy. Their health audit, they are not done, their C checks and so on. So they were suspended until they rectify all those. So Aero Contractor seemingly self-suspended themselves because they knew that probably the torchlight will come on them. So you now have airlines shutting down or being suspended, but demand to aviation is increasing.
It's increasing.
Capacity is not increasing to accommodate it. So, and generally, when you have demand higher than supply, it means prices increase. So, and it's all because of Forex. You now have, because Forex is a problem, you now have planes skipping their C checks. You know, you are supposed to do C check every 18 months. So because you know that
do not have the Forex,
you now leave it for
which is also a risk.
It is a risk.
At the end of the day for the passengers.
It is a risk because you have to, and the maintenance is done outside. They have complained that a C check abroad is over 500,000 naira. Sometimes some run into 1 million. And during that period, if it's 2 weeks, it means you are not going to work. You have to fly your airport, fly your pilots and so on there. And for that period, whether you fly or not, every 18 months you must do your C check. So everything boils down to Forex. And the CBN has problems. There's oil theft. Forex is not coming in. They were planning to get Eurobonds in the last 2 years has been the major source of our Forex. We were not able to go for the last. So it's just almost like a crisis sector
for the aviation sector. But with all of this happening, yes, yeah. With all of this happening, some time ago they even threatened to down tools, and before before the House of Assembly, National Assembly came to intervene. But do you foresee a situation like that coming again?
Yeah, it's two ways. I foresee a situation where they either go on strike again, which I don't know. They will always get appeals because you know the last one they even did, there was some sabotage. You now had one, without calling names, 1 or 2 airlines trying to pull out. So there were accusations that probably the policymakers tried to see 1 or 2. So there's usually not this agreement, this total agreement. But I think I see two situations. Either there will be this kind of strike, or it's not just like a case of survival of the fittest.
Okay.
More planes are going to ground, are going to go under. Dana Air has been for a month. We thought it's just something that would take weeks. It was in July. We are going to the 2nd month. They have Aero Contract. Some are now reducing from 4 planes to 1 plane.
Okay.
So more planes are, after the COVID, you know, they've not
even recovered from that.
You know, many went under. So I don't know. It's a situation where it will now be like a case of survival of the fittest. So those who are, many are taking loans from bank. The NCAA, National Aviation Authority, MD had a meeting with stakeholders last week, and it was being the major source of our Forex. We were not able to go for the last. So it's just almost like a crisis sector
for the aviation sector. But with all of this happening, with all of this happening, some time ago they even threatened to down tools, and before before the House of Assembly, National Assembly came to intervene. But do you foresee a situation like that coming again?
Yeah, it's two ways. I foresee a situation where they either go on either go on strike again, which I don't know. They will always get appeals because, you know, the last one they even did, there was some sabotage. You now had one, without calling names, 1 or 2 airlines trying to pull out. So there were accusations that probably the policymakers tried to see 1 or 2. So there's usually not this agreement, this total agreement. But I think I see 2 situations. Either there will be this kind of strike, or it's not just like a case of survival of the fittest.
Okay.
More planes are going to ground, are going to go under. Dana Air has been for a month. We thought it's just something that would take weeks. It was in July. We are going to the 2nd month. They have aero contracts. Some are now reducing from 4 planes to 1 plane.
Okay.
So more planes are, after the COVID, you know, they've not
even recovered from that.
You know, many went under. So I don't know. It's a situation where it will now be like a case of survival of the fittest. So those who are, many are taking loans from bank. The NCAA, National Aviation Authority, they had a meeting with stakeholders last week, and it was threatening that most banks have been complaining that the airline is owing them 9 billion naira and 7.6 million in foreign currency to the banks, and threatening that they will withdraw their air transport license and their air operation certificate if they don't pay. But where do these airlines get? They are in a financial crunch. So I see, as I said, most planes will just quietly go under, and capacity, as I said, will not be able to take demand. Prices will continue to increase. Employment is my major concern.
Yes, there are stories of reports of layoffs already going on.
Exactly, but you hear them trying to play down on
that it's temporary.
That it's temporary, that they will call them back. Many after the COVID, they were not called back. So if like Dana Air that has 4 now decides to operate 1, so the air hostess and so on who were operating the other 3, what happens to them? And there are reports that you have as many as 1,000 people that attend to just 1 plane. When it's so you have such situations that there will be layoff of workers, and a very terrible or worrying trend that has been going on is saying that most of these air staffs are ad hoc.
Okay.
They are not full size. Just some airline is just the pilot that is a full staff. So they are just like ad hoc. Whenever they want to fly, they call you, they pay your allowances, and then whenever there is no flight, you sit at home. So we are complaining of problems in the economy, then you now have issues of unemployment and so on. So that's the major fear I have. But CBN cannot even come to bail them out because the CBN itself almost needs a bailout themselves.
Because of the forex issue. Wow, yeah. Forex issue seems to be a very big problem. And while it started as something that was very little, but with every month, with every day, it seems to become a very big problem to every sector. If most of the airline operators were domestically owned, would we have this kind of challenge? Especially as it concerns repatriation of funds.
Yeah, we still will have challenge, yeah, but the challenge would be that I think the only solution to the challenge is we should produce Jet A1 fuel, because if we had our refinery, because Jet A1 is just one of the byproducts of the many petroleum products, just like how you produce fuel, PMS for your vehicles, kerosene for your lamp, engine oil. So it's one of the byproducts.
So it's possible that the modular refineries in Nigeria produce Jet A1 fuel.
Of course. In fact, the NNPC GMD has made another promise again that by June next year we would have full capacity modular refineries will be exporting. So let's see, we cannot doubt them. So if we were producing, then everybody is hoping on Dangote oil, then at least that part will be taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, so whether repatriation or not, I think if we were, the whole thing boils down to the fact that we should be a producing economy.
Okay.
We'll come back to it again. And there are no quick fixes. If we were producing, we would have forex. We would not be bothering about where to get. We'll be selling air conditioners, we'll be selling cameras, we'll be selling electronics.
And so even the demand for forex would be less.
Exactly. And our primary product that we are selling as oil, we know that there has now been a fix in the oil sector. They've given the contract for protecting the pipelines to one of the Niger Delta agitators. So we hope that will help to plug some of
the issue